So, welcome to the Gita Jayanti special, brought to you by the ISKCON Sri Narasimha Mandir. Today we'll begin chapter 9. My apologies that we had to cancel the class in the last minute yesterday. But before we begin, let's quickly look at chapter 8. So we said that chapter 8 is titled Akshara Brahma Yoga. Which is essentially how do you attain the Supreme Lord? And as we were looking at the slides and reading some of the shlokas, we understood that our entire life is actually a preparation for death, and that death is a final exam for us. It's a surprise exam, it can come at any time. Therefore, the question is how best to prepare for the time of death. Because you can recall that Shri Krishna has already said that if anybody remembers him at the time of death, they will attain his supreme abode. And at the end of chapter 7, Lord Krishna has used some specific terms. So, therefore, chapter 8 begins with Arjuna seeking clarification with 8 questions. And Arjuna's last question is how can we think of Krishna at the time of death? And Sri Krishna answers the first 7 questions rapidly and then focuses his attention on the last question of Arjuna, which is how to actually remember him at the time of death. You recall that we discussed that there is one type of transcendentalist who's called the Yoga Mishra Bhakta. So if you look at Ashtanga Yoga on this side and Bhakti Yoga on this side, the Yoga Mishra Bhakta is in the middle. So he's practicing Ashtanga Yoga and he also has devotion for Lord Krishna. But his objective is to seek liberation. Whereas a devotee's objective is only to serve the Lord. They are only seeking an opportunity to serve the Lord. Therefore, this Yoga Mishra Bhakta is not considered a pure devotee. He has a personal interest. A pure devotee does not have any personal interests. Their only interest is, how can I serve the Lord? Whereas anybody else practicing any other type of mixed bhakti with a little bit of this and a little bit of bhakti, such as this Yoga Mishra Bhakta, they do have self-interest. Seeking liberation is also considered to be self-interest in the sense that you are worried about ending your cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. You're not worried about serving Krishna. That's why such a devotee is not considered a pure devotee. In the sense that you want something out of it from worshipping Krishna. A pure devotee does not want anything from Krishna. The minimum that a pure devotee may ask the Lord is, please engage me in your service. But then this topic is about death, and most people don't like the idea of talking about death. But then it's going to happen to all of us one day or the other, even though all of us are living like as if we're not going to die at all. We're constantly making plans, we're making adjustments, we're doing so many things without even once considering that all of this is going to end, maybe quite suddenly for some of us, and maybe not so suddenly for some of us. So it's like we're watching a movie and you don't want your friend to tell you how the movie ends. You want it to be a suspense. But it's quite silly. There is no suspense here because we see death all around us. We see our loved ones leaving as they grow older. And we see death even in other aspects of nature. But somehow or the other, a human being is not willing to come to terms with the fact that everything that they're working so hard for is going to end at the moment that their soul has to exit the body. So, the goal of a devotee is by serving the Lord to go back to the spiritual world. No matter where you may be in this material cosmos, you may be in the upper planetary systems, you may be in Brahmaloka, but even then, one has to leave their body. So you can have a very long life like Lord Brahma, which is like 311 trillion, 40 billion years. Even after such a long life, Brahma has to give up his body. So, like this, Krishna says that this entire universe is, this cosmos is Dukkalayam Ashashvatam. Dukkalayam, it is filled with misery. Ashashvatam, meaning it is not a permanent place. Therefore, why should we make permanent plans to be here? Knowing fully well that we are not permanent, the cosmos is not permanent. So the word kunta means anxiety, and the word vai means without. So literally, Vaikunta is a place without anxiety. So, so Krishna is saying, if you remember me at the time of death, you will certainly come back to me, and there is no doubt about this. And we said that chapter 8, the single word summary is insurance. And you will discover in chapter 9, Krishna gives even more insurance. Although, chapter 9, so remember, Krishna has introduced the spiritual world in chapter 8. He contrasts the material world with the spiritual world. So, how do you gain entrance into the spiritual world? Krishna has said through the process of remembering him. So, what is the password to get into the spiritual world, which is what we will deal with in today's chapter, which is chapter 9? The password, the key to unlock the spiritual world is actually. So, how do you attain the Supreme to always remember Him and to constantly be engaged in devotional service? And the fact that this entire cosmos is temporary, and to give us a good example, Krishna talks about how Brahma also has to be vanquished. So, one day of Brahma, which is 1 12-hour period, is 4.3 billion Earth years. And similarly, Brahma's night is another 4.3 billion Earth years. So one day of Brahma is 8.64 billion Earth years. So like this, Brahma lives for 100 years, which is like 311 trillion years. So at the end, even Brahma has to give up his body. He does not have a choice in that regard. And then there is partial dissolution and then complete dissolution, which we will talk about today. So essentially, in this chapter, Krishna is actually talking about this Yoga Mishra Bhakta, how they have to time their death so perfectly. So Krishna is very expertly doing 3 sets of comparisons for Arjuna. One is, what is the result of remembering Krishna versus the result of not remembering Krishna? The result of remembering Krishna at the time of death, you will go back to him. The result of not remembering Krishna and thinking of anything else, Krishna says, guarantee you will get whatever it is that you're thinking about. So that's how crucial the final seconds are for us on this planet, which is whatever we're thinking about, that's what we're going to get. And we can recollect the story of Bharat Maharaj, who was thinking about the deer that he was taking care of. At the time of death, he was worried about who's going to take care of the deer, and therefore, in his next life, he takes the body of a deer. Then, the second comparison that Krishna is making in these 28 verses is that what is the process of practicing remembrance? How does a Yoga Mishra Bhakta remember Krishna? How does a Bhakta remember Krishna? Then, what is the actual execution of remembering Krishna? Again, the comparison between a Yoga Mishra Bhakta and a Bhakta. So these three comparisons are made. Remembering Krishna at the time of death versus something else. The process of practicing, the sadhana between a Yoga Mishra Bhakta and a Bhakta, and then the actual execution of how to remember Krishna at the time of death. The comparison between a Yoga Mishra Bhakta and a Bhakta. So we will not focus on the other questions because Krishna answers them very rapidly. So you recall the rule that we said, the universal rule, or the most important rule from which all other rules stem from, is that we should always remember Krishna and we should never forget Krishna. That would be the yam and niyam for us. Even the Srimad Bhagavatam says, Ante Narayana Smriti, which is all of us have to remember Krishna at the time of death. If we remember Krishna at the time of death, then you've got 100% on that exam, that final exam of yours. So the question is, how do you remember Krishna during life, and how to think of Krishna at the time of death? And the way we remember at the time of death is by thinking of Krishna. You're going to go back to Krishna. And Krishna also gives a brief glimpse of the spiritual world, very brief glimpse of the spiritual world. He's telling you it is eternal, it is transcendental, etc. So we've also mentioned that how Krishna raises the bar for Arjuna when it comes to his instructions. So in chapter 2, Krishna said, all of us have to work. We don't have a choice. We have to work. So why don't you just work? Because that's just the nature of every Jivatma. They have to work for survival. They have to work for a living. And then in that same chapter, Krishna also says towards the end, then you have to work as a matter of duty. So first, all of us have to work because we don't have a choice. To second, if you consider yourself a human being, then you have to work as a matter of duty. And then in the third chapter, Krishna says, do your duty and remember me. And here in the 8th chapter, Krishna is saying, remember me and then do your duty. Actually, Krishna wants you to remember him all the time. As much as we are preoccupied with doing so many other things during our daytime, we can take a 5-minute break, a 10-minute break, and just to do one round of japa or just read one page of the Bhagavad Gita. This way, we are also trying to come back to our anchor point, which is to always remember Krishna and to never forget Krishna. So when we begin our day by remembering Krishna, and then we start the rest of our activities during the day. So for us in ISKCON, we are quite keen that everybody chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, a designated number of rounds every day, preferably during the Brahma Muhurta time. So Srila Prabhupada has established this program in ISKCON so nicely that, Mangalarti, the temples, ISKCON temples open at 4:30. At 4:30, devotees attend Mangalarti, attend Tulsi Puja, because worshipping Tulsi is also a very, very important part of our practicing Bhakti Yoga. Tulsi Devi is also known as Bhakti Devi. So if we are sincere towards Tulsi Devi, she will also grant us her blessing so that we may reach Krishna. We have to remember that Tulsi Devi is very dear to Krishna. So any devotee that is very dear to Krishna, and Krishna considers them to be a pure devotee, we get the same results of worshipping the devotee as well. So therefore, watering the Tulsi plant every day and circumambulating the Tulsi Maharani at least 4 times every day, at least in the morning, that's nice, besides worshipping Krishna. So the program is set very nicely. You begin your day by remembering Krishna, and then you get ready to do your other householder and other responsibilities. So, in this regard, there is a little pastime about a sage by the name Pipalayana. So he goes to the heavenly planets, and there is a dance performance going on. And he's there with Narada Muni. The Gandharvas are um, performing a dance performance. Their musical instruments are playing. And as the uh, Vipalayana sage and Narada Muni and others enter, what happens is that everybody immediately stands up um, as a matter of respect. And they also offer their obeisances. But there are two dancers that don't offer their obeisances. So this Pipalayana curses these two dancers because they had not bowed down. Everybody else had bowed down the minute they saw exalted personalities entering the sabha. These two dancers are called, their names were Haha and Huhu. This Haha becomes a tiger later on because of the curse, and this Huhu becomes a crocodile in Bahulavan. And eventually he gets in one of the 12 forests in Vrindavan, and eventually he gets released by the association of Lord Krishna. So the dancers accept the curse, but they also tell Pipalayana sage that, why don't you do a rewind of the scene as you entered and see for yourself that your curse was actually not valid. I mean, you should not have cursed us. So, sure enough, Pipalayana rewinds and he sees that as everybody else had physically offered obeisances, these two dancers had mentally offered obeisances. So the Lord also accepts what you offer to him mentally. That is, if you don't have the means to do it physically, then you can offer it mentally. For example, generally a practicing devotee avoids eating outside food. Food prepared by karmis can impact your consciousness significantly. So we try to avoid or at least reduce any consumption of store bought items or foods created or cooked by others. Especially food that is not offered to Krishna, we try to avoid because it's not considered sanctified food. But in the event you can't avoid it, you're traveling and you have to consume outside food, then mentally you can offer that food to Krishna by reciting a very simple mantra and then honor it because then it becomes sanctified food. Even though it was not cooked with love for Krishna, nevertheless, to remove the karmic reactions, as Krishna says, right, in chapter 3, that those who eat without offering it to me are verily eating only sin. Whereas the devotees always offer whatever they are consuming because that food is not just food for your body, it is also food for your mind, intelligence, and your consciousness as well. So we cannot see food as just something that keeps your physical body fit. Whatever we consume should also be spiritual in nature. By offering it to Krishna, it becomes spiritual. So, anyway, the sage sees that, yes, actually, these two dancers had offered obeisances. They couldn't interrupt their dance to offer him obeisances, but out of deep respect for the sages entering the sabha, they had offered obeisances mentally. So at that time, um, Pipalayana gets even more upset. First of all, he had cursed these two, and once a curse is given, it cannot be retracted. So he gets upset with himself, and then he curses himself, and then he curses Mother Earth, and then he also curses Narada Muni, saying, "Why did you keep quiet? You should have corrected me before I could implement that curse." So essentially, what is Krishna saying? All of us have to do our duties in a very, very sincere way, such that we are completely dependent on Krishna for whatever results he gives us. So there is a saying that, the atheists work like everything depends on them. They don't consider the presence of the Lord or the intervention of the Lord in anything that they do, or the guidance or the blessings of the Lord in anything that they do. So even though Krishna tells Arjuna in chapter 11, "I have come here, I am the Supreme Lord, I have come here to kill everyone on this battlefield." Krishna never tells Arjuna, "You sit back, you relax. Anyway, I have come to kill. Why should you work hard?" No, what does Krishna want to see from us? He wants to see 100% effort. He wants to see 100% sincerity in whatever duties and responsibilities we are performing. In whatever Varna Ashrama we are in, we have to do whatever that is in a very, very nice way. Right? It is not that Krishna says, "Oh, now that you're my devotee, I will take care of everything, you just relax." No. Krishna wants you to put in effort. From there, Krishna will um, guide your life and guide the trajectory in which your life is moving. So essentially, what are we saying? This entire chapter is saying, if you don't set aside time for Krishna, then it's going to be very difficult for you to remember Krishna at the time of death. So through this process, Krishna is talking about the Sat Chakra Yoga, the 6 chakras. How do you gradually raise your life airs to the topmost chakra, which is on top here at the Brahmarandra, and how at that time you actually leave the body. As a matter of fact, Krishna, when he kills one of the Asuras um, called Aghasura, when he was a very young child, he chokes Aghasura, and Aghasura actually leaves his body through the Brahmarandra at the top of the head. So this question is always asked, we would have read that when Krishna kills demons, they also get to go back to the spiritual world. And it doesn't seem to be very fair that demons are demons, but when they come in contact with Krishna, they go back to the spiritual world. So that just to give you some clarity on this, when Krishna kills anyone, whether it's a demon, obviously it's going to be a demon, but if the demon at the time of leaving their body, they recognize that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, then he goes back to the spiritual world. Otherwise, at best, they will enter the Brahma Jyoti. But if you do pure devotional service, which is Ananya Chetaha, which is always constantly remembering Krishna with undivided attention, then Krishna says it's very easy to come back to me. Sulabha. This is the only place in the Bhagavad Gita that the Lord uses the word easy in the 8th chapter. That it is easy to come back to Him if we are able to successfully remember Him all the time. So then the question is, how do we progress on the path of bhakti? And how do you know that you're actually progressing when you're chanting the holy names of the Lord as per the instructions of our Acharya Srila Prabhupada? So once one of Prabhupada's disciples asked him, "Prabhupada, how do we know that we're making progress? Because initially you may not see any change, you may not experience anything different. How do we know that we're actually making progress?" And Prabhupada said, "Well, when you slowly get detached from all of your material desires and hankerings, then you know indirectly that you are actually making progress because your tastes are changing. So when your tastes change from the material to the spiritual, you know that you're making spiritual progress. So Dukkalayam Ashashvatam is what Krishna has said in shlokas 20 to 22 when he talks about the material world and compares it to the spiritual world. So now coming to Lord Brahma and his lifespan, and I think someone was asking about Pralaya. So we'll just quickly go over that and then we'll start chapter 9. So we said Brahma lives for 311 trillion, 40 billion earth years. So when Brahma has to sleep at night, when he has to rest, then we said the bottom 11 planetary systems get submerged. There are 14 planetary systems in every universe. And in every universe, when that particular Brahma goes to rest, then 11 planetary systems go underwater. This is called partial destruction. Like this, Brahma lives for 100 years. That means every night of Brahma, 11 planetary systems go underwater. So what does Brahma have to do when he wakes up? Every day, like when Brahma wakes up, what do we do when we wake up? We get up, take a bath, have some breakfast and go to work or go to school or whatever it is that we are doing, right? You must be wondering, what is Brahma's job every day? This is Brahma's job every day. When he wakes up, he has to create again. He is considered the secondary creator. The Lord has already created the raw elements, and Brahma has to use those raw elements to create again. One of the first things he has to do is he has to push all that water down and bring those planets back up into space. All the planets have gone underwater. The 11 planetary systems, rather, I should say, have gone underwater. Therefore, Brahma has to, every day he wakes up, he's got that same job. Bring those planets back up out of water. Then he has to deal with all kinds of demons coming to him for prayers like Hiranyakashipu, Ravana, etc. All of them asking for boons. He has to do his own rounds of chanting and sadhana. And then at the end of 100 years, when Brahma has to give up his life, then what is the signal for Lord Shiva? Well, Ananta Shesha begins to spit fire from his mouth. And then the Samvartaka cloud inundates the entire universe and all of the universes go underwater. Then what happens? All the Jivatmas enter into the body of Mahavishnu and they are in a resting state there. When Mahavishnu, who is also known as Karanodakashayi Vishnu, when he is ready to create again, then one Jiva will take the role of Brahma and then the whole process begins again. Then Brahma has to create again. So how does one become Brahma? Well, it is said that if you can strictly follow the Vedic scriptures for 100 years without any mistakes, without any breaches of conduct, then you can also become Brahma. So it is said that our current Brahma, the Brahma that is presiding over our material universe, is four-headed. And I think I mentioned other Brahmas in other universes. Different universes are much larger than our universe. So depending on the size and the level of responsibility, different Brahmas will have different number of heads, and accordingly they will manage their respective universes, Brahmandas. That's why they are called Brahmandas. Now, what our current Brahma is considered to be a devotee of the Lord. So if Brahma is a pure devotee of the Lord, then that particular Brahma at the time of Mahapralaya will go back to the spiritual world. They've completed their assignment in the material world, and at the time of their death, they will go back to the spiritual world. If they are not a pure devotee of the Lord, then they will take another assignment. It may or may not be the role of Brahma again. So this process keeps going on. And Krishna is telling us this to wake us up, and tell us even Brahma has to die after so many years. Therefore, Krishna uses the words in terms of earthly calculations, 1000 Chatur Yugas is one mere 12-hour period of Brahma. So, Krishna is saying, then can you imagine how hard every one of us is working? The ant is working hard, the elephant is working hard, Brahma is working hard, Devatas are working hard, every Jivatma is working hard. And then for the Yoga Mishra Bhakta, Krishna says they have to time everything right. The time of the day, the whether it is dark or light, the influence of fire, the position of the sun, the waxing or waning of the moon, all of this matters. Everything has to be timed right in order for them to exit their body and go back to the spiritual. If they're not able to time this right, then they are lost. And then Krishna says that, but this does not apply to his devotees. This applies to the Yoga Mishra Bhaktas, because they are partly practicing Ashtanga Yoga, then Satchakra Yoga, and they also have mixed devotion to the Lord. So even if you fail in the path of bhakti, in Krishna's eyes, you have still succeeded. And we'll come to one of the shlokas today in chapter 9 that will make it extremely clear to us how merciful Krishna is. I think there were a lot of questions that were asked in the last class about, what if somebody is evil, but then they are practicing bhakti? Or what if they practiced bhakti and then they gave it up and they do all kinds of nasty things? What happens? Well, you can hear from Krishna directly what he thinks about his devotees in the chapter that we'll do today, which is Raja Vidya Raja Guhya Yoga. But there's one more example from the Ramayana. When Ravana kidnaps Mother Sita, Jatayu tries to fight with Ravana quite unsuccessfully. He was definitely no match. He did his best to serve his lord by trying to protect Sita Devi by fighting with Ravana. And I was actually, interestingly, I was listening to a lecture on Ramayana today, and a question was asked, if Lord Ram is Maryada Purushottam, he comes as an ordinary, in the mood of an ordinary devotee. He doesn't advertise himself as the Supreme Lord. Of course, all the acharyas know that he is the Supreme Lord. All the great rishis know that he is the Supreme Lord. Nevertheless, he doesn't conduct himself as a Supreme Lord, except in this one situation with Jatayu. He gives Jatayu moksha. So people may ask, why did you give him moksha? You are acting as an ordinary man, as an ordinary, as a human being, an exalted human being in the position of a king. And I heard a fascinating explanation from the Sri Sampradaya. It is said that when Jatayu loses his wings, Sita Devi is so concerned, she manages to get out of the chariot, and she embraces Jatayu, saying, thank you for trying to help me, before Ravana whisks her away. And so the question is, why did Lord Ram offer Jatayu moksha? When Jatayu speaks to Lord Ram and tells him, you will find your wife. I've seen the constellations. The stars are formed in such a constellation that if you follow this particular path, you will be successful in finding your wife and getting her back. It is said that, as per one of the commentaries on Valmiki Ramayana, one of the acharyas has written that when Lord Ram first saw Jatayu, he saw, uh, you know, golden imprints on his body. And Lord Ram said that my dear consort Sita Devi has touched you. The minute she has granted you her grace, I have no choice but to give you moksha. Which is very, very interesting because in our Vaishnava Sampradaya, we say, without the permission and benediction of Srimati Radharani, we cannot go back to Krishna, which is why we have to worship them together. The Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, the word Hare, is a reference to Srimati Radharani. We're calling out to Radharani and asking her to please engage us in the service of her beloved. And by this, she has to give a recommendation letter to Krishna. Krishna is actually very tough. He does not give you liberation. He does not allow you to enter the spiritual world easily. But the minute a devotee recommends you to him, then he is obliged. Because he says, my devotee says so, then that's all I need to know. So therefore here, since Sita Devi had touched Jatayu, Lord Ram could see that and said, I don't have a choice because she has already granted you her mercy. Therefore, I have to send you back to the spiritual world. Right? So, in this case, Jatayu was not successful in his seva of protecting Sita. But he had done it with such sincerity that not only did he invoke the grace of Sita Devi, but he also invoked the mercy of Lord Ram. So, when we are watering the seeds of bhakti, we have to constantly keep it protected to make sure no weeds are growing around it. That's what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says. So, one more pastime and then we'll go to chapter 9. Actually, two more pastimes. So, one day there was a prostitute washing her clothes on the banks of the river. And she could see that on the other side of the river was a Brahmana doing the same thing. And like this, they used to see each other every day. Now, when the prostitute used to lay her eyes on the Brahmana, she used to think, what a great person he is, what a great devotee he is, how much mercy he's received of the Lord. And I'm so fallen that I don't have the capacity to do anything spiritual. That was her thought process. Every day she would see him, she would mentally offer her obeisances to him and think that he's so fortunate, and but then she's not that fortunate. At the same time, the Brahmana was also seeing her across the river. The Brahmana used to look at her and think, thank God, thank God, just look at my life and look at her life. She's such a fallen soul. She's so wretched. She has to practice prostitution. So this he used to think of every day. So he was thinking negatively of her. She was thinking in exalted terms of him when they would see each other across from the river. So at the time of death, this prostitute, it is said, goes back to the spiritual world. Even though she was engaged in a profession that is considered to be um, quite abominable. This Brahmana goes to hell. And he protests. When he goes to hell, he asks, wait a minute, I've been a Pakka Brahmana, I've been practicing everything. Why am I here? And Yama Maharaj tells him, you have a long way to go. You may have been externally practicing, but internally you're not. And he explains to him how negatively he was thinking about this prostitute and thinking of her as low, fallen, unfortunate, wretched, etc., etc. Whereas the prostitute had a very positive outlook on another Jivatma. You recall that a particular shloka in chapter 5, Brahmana Gavi Hastini. Sunichaiva Shwapakecham, that particular shloka where a self-realized person, the word Brahmana means you've understood Brahman. Otherwise, why would you be calling yourself a Brahmana? The very fact that this Brahmana did not exhibit that he had understood or realized Brahman and where he was finding faults with others and thinking negatively about them determined his destination. Then we'll come to the three brothers, Ravana, Kumbhakarna, and Vibhishana. So Ravana was propitiating Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, and he asks Lord Brahma to give him a boon. And in that boon, he said, I should not be killed by anyone other than a human being. In the sense, he left out human being as part of his ask because he was so arrogant. He thought, I've conquered the demigods. What's an ordinary human being going to do to me? And therefore, the Lord comes as an ordinary human being to take his life. So, Lord Ram comes uh, as an ordinary human being, and therefore he doesn't exhibit that he is the Supreme Lord. Then Kumbhakarna also asks for a boon, but then the demigods realized, if one brother has asked for something, if the other brother also asks for something, they had to intervene. So, what do the demigods do? The demigods, in the form of Mother Saraswati, when he utters and asks for that boon, actually, Kumbhakarna was going to ask for Indra's post. That I should be the Indra and Indra should be, whoever is occupying the position of Indra should be dislodged. When we say Indra, Chandra, Surya, all of this, these are all designations. They are actually not the names of the Jivatmas that are occupying that particular post. So Brahma is a post, Indra is a post, Chandra is a post, Surya is a post, and so on and so forth. So he wanted to take the post of Indra, but then through the influence of Mother Saraswati, when he was reciting that shloka, instead of saying Indra, he says Nidra. So Brahma says Tathastu. So instead of saying Indra, he says Nidra. So for 6 months he sleeps, he will wake up for one day and then go back to sleep again. So whereas when Vibhishana was offered a boon by Brahma, what does Vibhishana ask? Vibhishana was also born in a so-called demoniac family, but obviously he was not exhibiting demoniac tendencies. So when his turn comes to ask Brahma, he tells Lord Brahma, I actually don't want anything. I just want to become a devotee of the Lord. So please grant me my desire to become a devotee of the Lord. And Brahma was so pleased with him that he makes him immortal. Now, this also I got some clarity when I was listening to some other lecture. What does the word immortality means? We've just said nobody has immortality, right? When there is Mahapralaya, everybody has to go. There's no choice. So immortality here means just lengthening your life than longer life than usual. Maybe a much more youthful you than usual. So Vibhishana gets this boon of being Chiranjeevi, right? Just like Hanuman has that boon of being Chiranjeevi. So Brahma was so pleased, he grants him a very, very long life. There's a very sweet pastime of Vibhishan visiting uh, Puri Jagannath temple, and one of the priests notices that he's extremely tall, and it was the middle of the night. The priest was going to the temple to open the temple doors to prepare for the morning arati, and he saw a huge giant shadow fall in front of him. And he was not afraid because it seemed like this huge giant was also walking towards the Jagannath temple. So the priest asks him, who are you? And this gentleman says, I'm Vibhishana. And the priest says, but how do I know that you are Vibhishana? And so Vibhishana takes off his armlet and says, I will give this as a gift to you. So even today, if you go to Puri Jagannath, I don't know where they've stored it, I have not seen it. But there is a bracelet. That bracelet is so huge, it's the size of a lorry tire. That shows you how tall this personality Vibhishan was. Different yugas, people were much, much taller. It is said that Lord Ram was 8 feet tall, as per the description of the Shastras. So you can imagine how tall Vibhishan must have been. So this bracelet of Vibhishan is there in Jagannath Temple. If you know a panda, you can ask them where it is. So the boon that Vibhishana got was one of spirituality, to become a nice devotee of the Lord. So with that, talking about death, and Krishna saying these rules don't apply to my devotee, because the devotees, by practicing bhakti, they get the benefit of all of the other yoga systems. So now Krishna has to talk about even more confidential knowledge. So today's chapter is called Raja Vidya Raja Guhya Yoga. Chapter 8, the single word summary was insurance. Chapter 7, the single word summary was boss, where Krishna establishes himself as the supreme boss. And in chapter 8, Krishna is giving you multiple layers of insurance, that if you think of him, no problem, come back to him. And yes, of course, that brings the question, how do we think of him? And what's the trick? That is what is going to be discussed in today's chapter. Before we begin, let's offer our most humble obeisances to His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So today's acronym is KING, Rajavidya Rajaguhya, the king of knowledge and the most confidential knowledge. So let us see how chapter 9 begins. It's a slightly longer chapter, but it is the most important chapter for those who are practicing Bhakti Yoga. Because this reveals the Lord's mood towards the Bhakta. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed." Actually, it's a very, very nice shloka. Needs to be memorized because the title of the chapter comes from this. So Krishna is saying, Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam Pavitram Idamuttamam Pratyaksha Bhagamam Dharmyam Susukham Kattum Avyayam. So what is Krishna telling Arjuna? What I'm about to tell you, Arjuna, listen carefully. This is the king of all knowledge. What knowledge? The spiritual science that Krishna has talked about in chapter 4. The most secret of all secrets. Not everybody knows this. I'm going to reveal it to you because you're not envious of me. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. The single word summary for today is bhakti. Krishna is going to talk about bhakti. And how is Krishna defining bhakti? It is the king of all knowledge. It is a supreme secret. Through practicing bhakti, you can realize yourself simply by realizing God. Krishna says it is the perfection of all religion. And most importantly, it is everlasting. And bhakti is something that is performed joyfully. It brings great joy to the practitioner. It brings even more joy to Krishna to receive that service from you. Krishna says, those who are not faithful in this devotional service cannot attain me, O conqueror of enemies. Therefore, they return to the path of birth and death in this material world. Krishna is saying, when you perform bhakti, your faith must grow. If faith is not there, then you have to come back to the process of birth and death. By me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. Now, there are some shlokas like little riddles. It needs to be understood in the context. Krishna is within all of us as Paramatma. So, what does he mean when he says all beings are in me? Which means we are also inside him and he is inside us. How can both be true? Well, both are true. When Krishna says all beings are in me, but I am not in them, in the sense that he is not contaminated, even though we are part and parcel of him. And yet, everything that is created does not rest in me. Now, you would have heard one more shloka where Krishna says, I am like the thread that is holding all these pearls together. Now, here he is saying, nothing rests in me. Behold my mystic opulence, although I am the maintainer of all living entities, and although I am everywhere, I am not a part of this cosmic manifestation, for myself is the very source of creation. Essentially, Krishna is saying, this material cosmos is like a jail cell. I have nothing to do with it. It is being maintained by my opulences and by my energies. I am not personally involved in the maintenance. It is outsourced to Lord Vishnu. Understand that as the mighty wind blowing everywhere rests always in the sky, all created beings rest in me. O son of Kunti, at the end of the millennium, all material manifestations enter into my nature, and at the beginning of another millennium, by my potency, I create them again. Here he's talking about himself as Mahavishnu. So Krishna is saying, when all of the universes have to be wound up, what happens? They go back into his body. And then, when he is ready, they come back again. The whole cosmic order is under me. Under my will, it is automatically manifested again and again. And under my will, it is annihilated at the end. O Dhananjaya, all this work cannot bind me. I am ever detached from all these material activities, seated as though neutral. Krishna is saying all of this is going on perfectly smoothly. I'm there, but I'm not there. I'm aware, but I don't partake in anything. Then Krishna says, this material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. So everything has been outsourced. Krishna is not personally taking care of this. Who's taking care of all of this? Prakriti. Prakriti is working under whose direction? Under Krishna's direction. So let's look at, we said this is Raja Vidya, Raja Guhya Yoga. So there are 3 degrees of confidential knowledge that is revealed in the Bhagavad Gita. In the 2nd chapter, the first confidential knowledge is that you are not this body, that all of us are actually spirit souls. The second level of confidential information that is revealed is in chapter 4, when Krishna talks about the spiritual science, that the Paramatma and Jivatma are related to each other, and the Jivatma's role is always to be subordinate and cooperate with the Paramatma. And now here, Krishna in the 9th chapter is talking about the most confidential knowledge, which is when you perform pure bhakti, you can purchase Krishna's affection and love. But then you are doing it to please the Lord. But the Lord is so bound by your love that he is ready to obey you, like as if he is your servant. So the first level of confidential knowledge is that there is a difference between the body and the soul. The second level of confidential information is there is a sambandha between Paramatma and Jivatma. That sambandha is eternal. The third level of confidential knowledge is that you can conquer Bhagavan through the process of bhakti. So, Anusuyava, non-envious, Shraddha, faith. Two words that Krishna uses in the first shloka, 9.1, where Krishna says, because you are non-envious and you are faithful, I am going to reveal this most confidential knowledge. What is the characteristics of this knowledge? Raja Vidya, king of all knowledge. Raja Guhyam, its most confidential, secret of all secrets. Pavitram, it is pure. Uttamam, topmost, transcendental. Pratyaksha dharmyam, it is the perfection of all dharma. Susukham, when anybody performs bhakti yoga, it is a joyful process for them. Avyayam, that bliss is everlasting. And then Krishna talks about the inconceivable relationship that he has with Prakriti. You can see in this picture Lord Vishnu and Durga Devi as his servant. So Krishna says, Maya Dhyakshena Prakritihi Suyate Sacharacharam Hetunanena Kaunteya Jagad Viparivartate. This material nature, which is one of my energies, that means Durga Devi is an energy of Krishna, is working under my direction. O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. So she takes care of all of this process as a cycle. Everything goes as per cycle. Then Krishna talks again about those who do not worship him. Krishna says, fools deride me. They think I don't exist. Krishna says, avajananti mam mudha manushim tanumashritam param bhavamajananto mama bhutamaheshwaram. Krishna is saying, fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the supreme Lord of all that be. So Krishna is saying, unfortunately, there are a set of characters that don't recognize me. They think I'm an ordinary person. What causes them to do this? Moghasha moga karmano mogha jnana vichetasah rakshasim asurim chaiva prakritim mohinim shritaha. Those who are thus bewildered are attracted by demoniac and atheistic views. In that deluded condition, their hopes for liberation, their fruitive activities, and their culture of knowledge are all defeated. So Krishna is saying, anytime we embark on trying to do anything without him in the picture, everything will be defeated. How is it defeated? At the time of death, everything comes back to zero. Next life, they have to start all over again. Whereas for a devotee, even if we have to die and take another birth, we start where we left off. Therefore, Krishna is saying everything is defeated for these atheists. They don't realize the value of having me in their life. And then Krishna contrasts them to a Mahatma. Mahatmanastu mam partha daivim prakritamashritah bhajantyananya manaso jnatva bhutadamavyayam. So, in contrasted to those who are deluded, those who are not deluded. O son of Partha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. So Krishna is saying, great souls, they know who I am. Because they know who I am, what do? They are always engaged in doing bhakti. And who are they protected by? By my divine nature. So just like Maya Devi is one of the energies of the Lord, the same energy in the spiritual world protects the Lord's relationships with the devotees. She is called Yoga Maya. So in the material cosmos, this separated energy of the Lord is called Durga Devi, represented by Durga Devi. But the same energy that assists the Lord in his pastimes is called Yoga Maya, represented by Subhadra Devi. So devotees are under the protection of Subhadra. That's why Maya Devi cannot touch you. The minute you become a devotee of Krishna, Krishna's Yoga Maya potency protects you, even when you are in this physical body. How to recognize a Mahatma? Krishna is giving the symptoms of the Mahatma. And what are they doing? Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dridhavrataah namasyantascha mam bhaktya nityayukta upasate. Krishna is telling, what do my pure devotees do? Oh, they are always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me. These great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. Krishna is saying they've just conquered me. How have they conquered me? They're always thinking of Krishna. How are they always thinking of Krishna? They're always preaching. They're always chanting my holy names. No matter what kind of obstacles that I put in their path, they keep marching forward with determination. They don't give me up. They bow down to me. They are constantly engaged in my worship. So Krishna is talking about great pure devotees, what qualities they have and how they conquer him. How do they bind him? They bind Krishna with their bhakti. Krishna can only be bound by bhaktas. So kirtayantaha, they are always chanting. Dridhavrataha, with a fixed vow. Namasyantaha, offering obeisances. Nityayukta, always engaged. They are always yoked to Krishna. They don't give up, no matter how many disturbances they may experience. And then Krishna talks about different types of people who worship differently. The indirect worshippers, ekatvena, those who believe that they and the Lord are one and the same, it's just they have not realized it. Prithaktvena, they worship the Lord in his many forms. Bahuda Vishwato Mukham, they worship the Lord in his cosmic form, in his Virat Rupa form. We'll come to this a little bit more in detail if we have time tomorrow. So, what happens? So, there are certain people who reject Krishna, there are certain people who accept Krishna. So, now Krishna has to tell you what happens if you reject him or you accept him, depending on your level of surrender again. Yanti deva vrata devan pitran yanti pitravrataah bhutani yanti bhutejya yanti mam yajinopi mam. Krishna saying, those who worship the demigods will take birth among the demigods. Those who worship the ancestors go to the ancestors, Pitraloka. Those who worship ghosts and spirits will take birth among such beings. And those who worship me will live with me. Krishna is saying your type of worship determines your destination. So if you worship Krishna, you'll go back to Krishna. If you worship the demigods, you'll get to go live with them, but that's not moksha. So, what is the motive for a bhakta of Krishna? Just love for the Lord. And their love keeps growing the more they serve the Lord. What is the motive to worship the demigods? You want something from them. What's the difference between what Krishna can grant and what the demigods can grant? Krishna will only give you what is good for you, like a parent. Demigods are like shopkeepers. Whatever they have to sell, they will sell you as long as you pay the price. They don't have your larger interests in mind. Think about all the boons that Lord Brahma gives. Worked out as a disaster for many of the demons. Whatever Krishna blesses you with, it's eternal. Whatever the demigods give you, it's temporary because you lose it with the body. So in this chapter, we can understand what's the difference between the demigods and Krishna. So if Krishna is the CEO has many, many departments under him, and each department has its head, the finance head, the sales head, the marketing head, the R&D head, HR head. Like this entire universe has many, many departments, and Krishna has 33 crore devatas overseeing these various departments. Water, overseen by Varuna. Wind, overseen by Vayu. HR head, which is important for us. Yamaraj, we don't want to have a discussion with him. If you want to remove obstacles in material path, you go to Ganesha. For finances, Kubera. For education, Saraswati Devi. Like this, they are all department heads reporting to Krishna. They are all working for Krishna. So now Krishna has told us, what do Mahatmas do? Or how do they always think of him? How are they always worshipping? Now Krishna is going to say what he does for the Mahatmas. How does he reciprocate? Ananyas chintayanto mam ye janah paryupasate tesham nityabhiyukthanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. Krishna is telling Arjuna, but those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. So, this is how involved Krishna is in the lives of his devotees. The more you worship and meditate on Krishna, the more he's doing for you. He's carrying what you don't have, and he's making sure you get to retain what you have. He doesn't mean material things, he's talking about spirituality. What are the glories of devotional service? This will be the concluding section of the chapter. Krishna says, Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhaktyupahritam ashnami prayatat manah. Krishna is saying, if one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it. So the key word is bhaktya. That is, the devotee, whatever they are offering to Krishna, their mood is one of love and devotion. Krishna says, if love and devotion is part of your offering, no matter what you offer, I will accept it. But Krishna is saying you very simple things. He's not asking for grand things from his devotees. Offer some flowers to me, offer tulsi leaf to me, give me some fruits, give me some water every day. Of course, if Krishna has given you more, you have to do more. Because the way Krishna calculates is, what are you holding back, not what you're giving him. So if you are a millionaire and if you're visiting the temple and if you put 100 rupees in the hundi, then Krishna is seeing how much you're holding back. He knows what you have because he's the one who's given it to you. So charity also has to be done in proportion to the wealth that Krishna has given you. If Krishna has given you a lot of wealth, but you're stingy when it comes to charity, Krishna is going to judge you by what you're holding back. Because when you hold back, it suggests that you don't have faith in Krishna. It's a reflection of your mood and faith in Krishna. Krishna is not asking you to give every penny to him. He doesn't need your pennies. Krishna is looking for the intent behind your charity. Are you doing it as a mere token of appreciation? Or are you offering it with all love and devotion to Krishna? There are many pastimes in our scriptures of the poorest of poorest pure devotees of the Lord who offered their everything to him, and how the Lord reciprocated with them. They didn't even care whether they could get a meal the next day. They offered everything to Krishna. That's how much faith they had. So Krishna doesn't judge you by what you offer. Krishna judges you by the mood with which you're offering and how much you're offering and how much you're holding back. So Krishna talks about Nishkama Karma Yoga, which is doing your duty and offering your results to him. In essence, work is needed even for bodily maintenance. Whatever dharma we do, we have to do it for the pleasure of Krishna. If we eat, we should only honor prasadam. If we do charity, we should only do charity that is going to please the Lord. If we are performing any austerities, then we should only perform those austerities that please Krishna. Excessive torture of the body is not appreciated by Krishna. Some minimum austerity has to be performed, like Ekadasi, Vrat, etc., to purify your mind and consciousness, but extreme austerity is not recommended in the scriptures. So, what is the result of performing this Nishkama Karma Yoga? It gives you freedom. Freedom that comes by connecting our activities with the Lord, also called the regulative principles of freedom. The kite is free to float in the sky and go as high as it wants, as long as it's connected by the thread. The minute the thread breaks, the kite falls down. So we should never break our connection with Krishna. In this way, you will be freed from bondage to work and its auspicious and inauspicious results. With your mind fixed on me in this principle of renunciation, you will be liberated and come to me. So we must stay connected to Krishna. The minute we get disconnected from Krishna, everything will go down again. It's a very important shloka. Is the Lord partial? Krishna says, I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I am equal to all. The level with which anybody approaches him, Krishna says, I reciprocate equally. And then there is a sentence that begins with but. But whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I am also a friend to him. So Krishna is saying, I know when you're doing things out of love for me, out of devotion for me. By doing this, you have made me your friend, and I have also made you my friend. So essentially, Krishna is saying, I'm partial to my devotees. Otherwise, the Lord is equal to everybody. So even if the saintly temporarily fall down, here's the answer to some of the questions some of you were asking. Even Krishna says in Shloka 30, even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. If that person is determined to do bhakti for the pleasure of Krishna, they may still have other anarthas with them. But the Lord is saying, do not look at their anarthas. Look at the determination with which they are worshipping me, because that is what I am focused on. I am not focused on what they have yet to conquer. I am not focused on their other impurities. I am focused on the fact that they have begun their bhakti. They are determined to worship me. So, as long as their determination continues, the Lord will reciprocate and eventually all their anarthas will be gone. Everything is temporary. We all take our time to get rid of our bad habits. So, yes, one may begin practicing Krishna consciousness, be chanting, be reading the Bhagavad Gita, be attending classes, and also consuming meat. Of course, Krishna would like you to give up consuming meat, but that doesn't mean he starts opposing you. He knows that if you are determined, eventually you'll give it up. What is Krishna saying next? He quickly becomes righteous and attains lasting peace, which means Krishna is saying, yeah, to an ordinary man, he may still be doing all kinds of nonsense. In my mind, I know very quickly, because he's got so much determination to come back to me, he will become virtuous, righteous, and attain lasting peace. So essentially, don't cast stones on devotees of Krishna. You are judging them from a material lens. Krishna is looking at them from a spiritual perspective. And then Krishna says, O son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. So, anybody who's chanting the holy names of the Lord, anybody who's attending classes, anybody who's doing sevas, anybody who's doing charity for the pleasure of Krishna and his devotees, Krishna says, I have already considered them my devotee. Yeah, there may be other habits they are yet to give up, but with determination, they'll become righteous very soon. So, last shloka for today. Very important shloka for devotees because there are 4 instructions here for us. Krishna says, Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mam evaishyasi yuktvaivam atmanam matparayana. Krishna is telling us to do 4 things. The 4 things that his pure devotees do, we should try to follow. First thing, engage your mind always in thinking of me. What does Krishna prefer? Krishna prefers that we are always thinking of him. Very difficult to do, but with practice it can be done. If you cannot think of me, become my devotee. If you cannot become my devotee, offer your obeisances to me. If you can't do that, worship me. If you can, do all 4. If you worship me and offer your obeisances to me and become my devotee, then ultimately you will always think of me. So, being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. So, this is the last shloka of chapter 9, where the Lord is saying, it's important for you to do these 4 things. Begin by worshipping Krishna, offering Dandavat Pranam to Krishna every day. Become his devotee, exclusive devotee. Don't practice mixed bhakti. If you want to progress on the fast track, Krishna wants exclusive devotion. Only then you can always think of him. So, the acronym for today was King. What are the qualifications to understand this most confidential of knowledge? That you must have Shraddha, faith, and you must have Anusuyava, non-enviousness towards Krishna. What are the characteristics of this knowledge? It is everlasting, it is transcendental, it brings great joy and bliss, it's the topmost of dharma, it's the secret of secrets, it is the most scientific process of bhakti yoga. the inconceivable relationship between Prakriti and Paramatma and Jivatma. If we don't understand it, Krishna calls us fools. If we understand it, then we begin to worship Krishna and eventually get to the position of being a Mahatma. And then Krishna concludes by saying, Bhakti is very simple. Bhakti gives you freedom from all kinds of anxieties. And what does a bhakta do? A bhakta is always worshipping Krishna. In between, we skipped a lot of shlokas, but you can see here, what does the bhakta do? Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me. These great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. Then he talks about different other ways of worship. Krishna says, I am the ritual, I am the sacrifice. Anything you offer to the ancestors, I am only accepting it. I am the healing herb. I am the transcendental chant. I am the butter. I am the fire and the offering. I am the father of this universe, the mother, the support, and the grandsire. I am the object of knowledge. I am the syllable Om. I am also the Rig, the Sam, and the Yajurveda. I am your goal. I am actually sustaining you. I am the master of everything. I am also the witness. I have given you this abode. I am your refuge, and I am your most dear friend. I am the creation and the annihilation, the basis of everything, the resting place and the eternal seed. So Krishna is talking about his opulences. Oh Arjuna, I give heat and I withhold and send forth the rain. I am immortality and I am also death personified. Both spirit and matter are in me. Those who study the Vedas and drink the Soma juice seeking the heavenly planets worship me indirectly. Purified of sinful reactions, they take birth on the pious heavenly planet of Indra, where they enjoy godly delights. When they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure, and the results of their pious activities are exhausted, a repeat of what Krishna said in chapter 8, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the three Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death. Krishna is saying if you only follow those aspects of the Vedas, um, every single Veda is divided into 4 sections. What is called Brahmanas, Aranyaka, Samhita, and Upanishads. The first 3 deal with material pleasures. Upanishads deal with liberation and trying to break free of the cycle. So Krishna is saying if you're only following selectively those aspects of the Vedas that's going to give you all kinds of material pleasures, then you're caught in the cycle of birth and death. But those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. Those who are devotees of other gods and who worship them with faith actually worship only me, O son of Kunti, but they do so in a wrong way. I am the only enjoyer and master of all sacrifices. Therefore, those who do not recognize my true transcendental nature fall down. Those who worship the demigods will take birth among the demigods. Those who worship the ancestors go to the ancestors. Those who worship ghosts and spirits will take birth among such beings, and those who worship me will live with me. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, of water, I will accept it. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. In this way, you will be freed from bondage to work and its auspicious and inauspicious results. With your mind fixed on me in this principle of renunciation, you will be liberated and come to me. I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I am equal to all, but whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I am also a friend to him. Even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. He quickly becomes righteous and attains lasting peace. O son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. O son of Pratha, those who take shelter in me, though they be of lower birth, women, Vaishyas, and Shudras, can attain the supreme destination. How much more this is so of the righteous Brahmanas, the devotees, and the saintly kings? Therefore, having come to this temporary miserable world, engage in loving service unto me. Engage your mind always in thinking of me, become my devotee, offer obeisances to me, and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. Yeah. So, the single word summary today is bhakti, which is the password to bind the Lord to you, to have that deep sambandha, abhideya, and finally prayojana, which is pure love for the Supreme Lord. So, bhakti is the most confidential knowledge. It is the highest transcendental platform. It is highest on that yoga ladder. So, join us tomorrow where the Lord is going to describe Himself and His opulences even more in a chapter called Vibhuti Yoga, the opulence of the Absolute. And what is the Lord's opulence? The Lord's opulence are His devotees. So, the summary of the Bhagavad Gita is contained in 4 shlokas in chapter 10, which is called the Chatushloki Bhagavad Gita. So, in 4 shlokas, Krishna will conclude the whole Bhagavad Gita. The essence of the Bhagavad Gita is in this Chatushloki. So, don't miss tomorrow's session on Vibhuti Yoga.